Welcome back to Cynthia Untamed. This is your youthful and educational platform where we have conversations with and about children and young people in Africa, and we aim to inspire the current generation of leaders across the continent. Thank you for being here, and please tell a friend to tell a friend. Today, I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to excel in any media interview, be it on radio, on TV, a newspaper, a podcast, on YouTube. I've done lots of them, so please stay to the end so that you can know if you are preparing for any media interview. You've been called by CNN. Who knows? You've probably been called by CNN or Reuters. Please stay to the end, and I'm going to give you all the tips that you may need. Research on the journalist who's going to interview you. The reason why I'm saying that is because there are people who you really do not want to be associated with. So if somebody says they want to interview you, go and do a Google search and find out what kind of interviews have they done. Where are those interviews published? What do they do? What are their controversies? What are their positive traits? Try and find all the information that you can. If you know somebody who's been interviewed by that person, find information on them, because they're just people you don't want to be associated with, honestly. And probably there's nothing wrong with them. It's probably their brand. It's probably the things they do. It's probably the stories they've been involved in or involved with. Please research on the person who is going to interview you. Research on the person who's approaching you. Just do thorough research on that person. As we talk about researching on the journalist, please also research the platform that you're going to be hosted. So if somebody says, I am from XYZ Media, please research what that media platform is about, because sometimes you'll find yourself on some strange platforms. You're like, I do not want to be Googled and to be found there. I want to be found on credible sites. For example, for me, I do not want to Google myself and find that I took myself to an interview on some gossip website. I want to be found on positive websites, on authoritative channels like the BBC, like Forbes, like CNN. That's why I want to find my name. I do not want to find myself in some strange places. So please research on the person. And when I talk about authoritative and credible, I'm not just saying the big media houses. I'm talking about platforms like CynthiaUNTAMED.com, for example. You want to find yourself on those platforms where there's positivity, where there's inspiration. If need be, ask for guidelines. Sometimes maybe you're being called for an interview to talk about an issue you may not be 100% sure about or 100% familiar about, and maybe that journalist wants you to bring out that perspective. Do not be afraid to reach out to experts in that segment to talk about that particular issue. Do not be afraid to read about what other people have said. There is nothing new under the sun. So just because you read it and you got that information and now you're saying it on another space in that interview, does not make it a bad thing. Of course, you're going to be restating it in your own words. So ask for help from experts if you need to. Sometimes maybe someone will tell you, we want you to talk about mental health. And probably you could talk about your own mental health. You could talk about how you enable yourself to stay healthy and all that. But probably you cannot give like a perspective of the whole community, or maybe a community of young people. How do they thrive mentally? So don't be afraid to ask for experts for help in that area. You could also ask people who've been interviewed on the same topic. Never go for an interview, a media interview, without researching on the topic you're going to talk about. Please don't do that. Don't do that. If you're going to talk about education, read about education. Read the policies that exist. Watch previous interviews. Research. And why? Because when you go for that interview, it's not like you're going to be holding a book like this. They ask you, what is the impact of probably the delay of KCPE because of the pandemic, and you're now Googling what is the delay. No, they're going to expect you to give an answer there and then. So please research on the topic, and that will enable you to actually speak broadly. Because when we see you on TV and you're speaking on a topic, we want to hear the perspective that we don't know. We want to hear something that we've never heard of. We want to see if there's something in common with what you are going to say. Probably you'll share an experience that will feel like, oh, I can actually relate to that. So please, please, please research on the topic. What are your key messages? Remember, when you're going for a radio interview, you're not just going to sit there and say everything. There are those key messages that you want to be passed to your audience. When you leave that place, you'd like people to remember A, B, C, and D. For example, if you were to go for an interview on the International Day of the Girl, for example, you have to think about, my key message for this day will be about girls' empowerment, girls' education, and access to sanitary towels, for example. There are many issues that are affecting girls. There are many issues that are affecting children. And probably if you go and talk about 30 issues at the same time, your audience is going to finish listening to you without knowing exactly what you said. So if you can, if you must, write down what exactly you want to achieve. Write exactly what you want to say from that media interview, so that your audience comes out with a clear perspective of what exactly you say. They can actually say, Cynthia said A, B, and C from that media interview. I don't know how your memory is, but you might have to prepare some bullet points. Don't be afraid of doing that. Remember, for example, for a radio interview, people are not seeing you, so they won't see you checking points. If you're going on TV, you go with your laptop, your iPad. Well, maybe not your laptop because it's going to cover maybe your face and everything, but maybe your phone, your iPad. Just check, have some bullet points there, and don't be afraid to have a notebook. Sometimes we just take ourselves too seriously. Have some bullet points there that you can actually refer to and say, oh, my point number 1 was education, my point number 2 was COVID, my point number 3 was like that. And then your points will actually flow, so that you're not getting to a point where you're sitting for like 3 minutes, you pause like this, and then you start thinking, and then you start talking. We don't want to hear or see you thinking. We want to see the story flowing. Unlike where you're doing a newspaper interview where you can pause, because you can pause and reflect and it won't appear in the writing, in the final text. Please make sure that you actually have some bullet points if you need them. Please, I know I've said please many times, keep time, do not be late. Media works on a certain schedule, especially if it's radio, if it's TV, it works on a certain schedule. If they said Cynthia is supposed to be on radio at 8 a.m. and you appear at 9 a.m., that program will have ended, which means that you're not going to be part of that program. So keep time, even if it's an online, because sometimes you find that they'll do an online interview on Skype, then record the audio and then use that transcript or use the audio in another platform, maybe on BBC or wherever. So make sure you keep time so that the people who are also interviewing you don't get impatient. Keeping time is so important because media works on timelines. It works on timelines for sure. You need to demonstrate passion and energy. When we're listening to you on radio and you say you're very passionate about menstrual hygiene, you're very passionate about children in the justice system, and even when you speak, we're not feeling you. You know those people who speak and you're like, I'm not feeling it. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So you need to demonstrate passion, you need to demonstrate energy. How can you do this? Make sure as you speak, you use examples, use real life experiences, use your knowledge of the law, use your knowledge of policy, use your knowledge of resources, use your knowledge of previous interviews. You can say, oh, you know, there was actually this interview I was watching on BBC and they said A, B, C, and D, and this is actually my perspective. That is how you demonstrate passion and energy. Others will be like, okay, they just got someone, we just had them, but we really didn't feel the impact, and we don't want that to be you. Be clear and stick to the point. Sometimes there are people who start talking and you're like, hawamalizi. In Kenya it means, when are they going to finish? Please don't talk too much. Stick to the point. If you've been asked a question about how you grew up in Cherangani Hills, talk about growing up in Cherangani Hills. Don't now change it to, oh, you know, but those days, I even decided, oh, now I'm moving from Cherangani Hills, I'm going somewhere else. And then you change the story to how you used to be a farmer. Then you change it to how you became a miner. Then please stick to the question, so that you also allow the person who's interviewing you to ask you the next question, and that way that interview is able to flow. To tie to the point of being clear and concise, you also need to listen to the question you're being asked. Don't go into an interview, a media interview, and you're absent-minded. You're seated there, but you're thinking about probably how you should be eating fish at that point. I just like fish and chicken. But listen to the question that you're being asked, because remember, there's an audience. Always think about the audience. The audience will be following. And you see, if you're thinking about other things, you won't be able to respond to the question adequately. And don't be afraid to say, please repeat the question. You can always ask them to just repeat the question. If you didn't hear it clearly, it's understandable. You're human, it happens. But answer the question that you have been asked. Listen to the question you've been asked and respond to it accordingly. Another one, but this one is also tough to do. Stay calm. Please stay calm. Do not panic. Especially if this is your first media interview. Sometimes you'll be like, oh my goodness, I have never been interviewed. What's going to happen? You don't even breathe. Just stay calm. Stay calm. Breathe in, breathe out. Allow your mind to stay calm. Allow your mind to think. When you're calm, your brain will be able to think. Trust me. And you don't have to cram like a speech the night before when you're going for a media interview. You just need to speak confidently from your head, because your brain already has the knowledge. You just need to now exploit. You need to express it. So just stay calm, relax. If you need to, ask for a cup of water or a glass of water when you're there. Just relax, and it will really help if you get there on time, because you'll be able to get there and actually think through the points that you're actually going to say. Thank you for staying to the end. I really hope that you've gotten very useful tips on how you can prepare for your next media interview. If you've ever been interviewed on TV, on a podcast, any media platform, and you'd like to share more tips, please comment down below. A call to action to you is to participate in the UNICEF at 75 Wisdom Project for Young People. This is a competition for young people between 10 and 24 years in Kenya to interview the elders in their communities so that they can reflect on their childhood experiences over the last 75 years. It's a partnership with the Nation Media Group. So if you win, you just never know, your submission could be featured by the Nation Media Group. So please tell anyone who's between the age of 10 and 24 to participate in this challenge. I look forward to reading your submission. And because our episode today was talking about how you can prepare yourself for any media interview, I'd like to direct you to one of my media interviews that I've done before. This is a podcast on Youth Lead that is run by the United States International Development Agency, where I was talking about why we need safe spaces for women and girls. So please do check it out. I will also leave the link in the description bar below, and tell me what you get to learn out of that podcast interview, and tell me how you are also creating safe spaces for the women and girls in your community, whether that is your sister, your mother, or the girls you teach. Basically, if there are women in their communities, do check it out and tell me, did you like it? Did you not like it? And what kind of tips did you get from how I expressed myself from that media interview? Let's continue interacting beyond YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at CynthiaUNTAMED_Nyongesa, on Twitter at Cynthia_Oprah. Check out the stories of young changemakers on CynthiaUNTAMED.com, and I will see you in the next episode.